Hello book nerds, welcome to Bookshelf Bunny. I'm Kim, and today we'll be doing our April wrap-up. Okay guys, so April wasn't such a hot month for me. I did not get as much reading done as I wanted to. Frankly, I am completely exhausted. At my workplace, we had a couple of COVID-19 cases, so I had to get tested. We were also asked to shift into working from home, which is a lot of moving everything and set up and getting organized. So that was exhausting, but on the bright side, I was negative for COVID-19, hurrah, and I fully support working from home because anything that we can be doing to limit transmission until we have a majority vaccinated, I am all for, but I'm tired. That aside, let's talk about what I did read. The first book I read in April was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is the third installment of the Folk of the Air trilogy. The basic premise of this one is Jude finds her way back into Elfheim. She is I'm so tired, I can't even do this. She is immediately thrown into the world of deceit and subterfuge. She is thrown into war. She's thrown into conflict with her father figure, Madoc, who killed her human parents when she was just a child. She also finds that she needs to confront the feelings she has for Cardan, feelings that have sort of developed over the course of the trilogy, but she hasn't been able to let herself trust, because honestly, in this world, how do you trust anything? It's crazy. So this was a great wrap up to the trilogy. Really enjoyed it. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. The second book I read was The Queue by Basma Abdel Aziz. This one was read for my Read Harder Reading Log challenge. It was to read a book that was translated from another language, and in this case it was originally written in Arabic, translated to English. This book is sort of a dystopian future. It takes place in a version of Egypt, and a brand new authority has just seized control and set up this gate. And this gate is where all the paperwork and citizen processing takes place. So if you need a permit, you go to the gate. If you need proof of citizenship papers, you go to the gate. And the story takes place in a queue in front of the gate. A whole bunch of people lined up there for various reasons. Our main character, he has been shot in the stomach during what is known as the disgraceful events, which was basically an uprising or a protest. It's not exactly clear. And the government, these new authorities, are adamantly denying that they issued any orders for anyone to be killed, that no guns were fired. And so they don't want this bullet in this poor man's stomach to be removed, lest it provide proof of their deceit. And the doctor that treated him initially cleaned up the wound, sewed it up, so he didn't die immediately, this poor guy. Instead, this bullet is moving deeper and deeper and tearing its way through his insides, while he does everything he can to meet all of the recommendations and all of the regulations that the new authorities have set out for him. And so while he's going through this, we meet a number of other characters in the queue, and we get bits and pieces of their stories and the things that they need. And it's a fascinating tale about totalitarian society and a dictatorship, and how this particular authority is doing everything it can to maintain control and power. I gave this one a 4 out of 5, only because it kind of left me on a cliffhanger. Didn't wrap up quite as nicely as I would have liked. The third book I read is Later by Stephen King. I had sort of been on the fence about this one until I watched Jess the Book Freak's review on it, and she sort of inspired me to pick it up. Thanks, Jess. It follows a child who has this mysterious ability to see dead people, and it's something that he has to kind of keep under wraps because, you know, humanity. If they learn that you can do a thing, they're going to exploit the thing. And this is something his mother warned him about early on. So he does everything he can to keep this ability secret. but despite his best efforts, he still winds up tangled up in this plot, and he has to face this terrible, evil creature. And there were hints at the universe being very similar to Stephen King's It. It was a great story. Really enjoyed that one. Definitely check it out. I gave that one a 5 out of 5. The fourth book I read was The Hostile Hospital. It's the 8th book in a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. It's following our 3 orphan children during their ongoing quest to learn the truth behind their parents' murder. So they find themselves at this hospital and they volunteer because they have learned that this hospital has an immense records room that may have information about an organization their parents may or may not have been connected to. And of course, Count Olaf is there in disguise and shenanigans ensue. What I really liked about this 8th book is that the children who up to this point in the series are pretty well blameless. They're victims. They're just trying to muddle their way through and get answers. But they find themselves in a position where they have to make a choice. And it's not exactly a moral choice that they end up making. They have convinced themselves that it's for the greater good of their quest. But it doesn't entirely sit right with them. So it was a very adult situation for the Baudelaire children to find themselves in. And I really appreciated that extra depth. These kids are growing up. So I really enjoyed that. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 as well. The 5th book I read was Rose Madder by Stephen King. And Rose Madder follows Rose, who escapes an abusive relationship and finds a new life for herself through the help of a women's shelter and a new job and some solid friends. And she even ends up finding the start of a new romance. But her husband is completely deranged. He is a police officer in a position of power, and he is bound and determined to find her and make her pay. Now this guy's insane, completely insane, and he only grows crazier as the story progresses, so it's absolutely fascinating to watch his descent into madness. Lucky for Rose, she not only found a support system in her new town as she's rebuilding her life, but she also came across sort of an ancient being who has a painting that sort of acts as a portal between her world and Rose's world. And so Rose is a favor for this ancient being, and the ancient being promises that she will repay. And when Rose's husband shows up, he is certainly not expecting the supernatural aspect of his confrontation. So this is probably one of my new favorite Stephen King books. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great story of feminism and healing and sisterhood with a fabulous little supernatural twist. So really loved this one. If you're and maybe this is just me, but I really like the song Earl by the Dixie Chicks. I know they go by like the Chicks now or something, but their song about Earl, it felt like a theme song to this book. It really did. Loved this story. And the 6th book, this one I'm only about halfway through. I've got about 5 days left this month, so I'm hoping to finish it before the end of April. It's called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. The subtitle is Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. This is an interesting take on a very real problem that plagues a lot of Western countries, Canada, America, specifically colonizing Western nations who have a history of subjugating people in order to dominate the society that they've created. The main argument that she's making is racism is more of a social construct. It is an institutionalized entity, and it is ingrained into the upbringing of anyone who is white. I'm not finished it, but I expect she's going to go on to how once a person who is white comes to understand and is awakened to the reality of racism around them and how their action and inaction both contribute to it, that they then have a responsibility to do something. So I'll be interested to hear how she finishes that up. And that's it. That's all that I've read this month. Do you guys have any thoughts or opinions on any of the books that I shared? Hit me up in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. COVID-19 once in a while just likes to sneak up and bite us in the ass. It's kind of terrible. For the most part though, now I'm working from home. I get to be isolated from society, so I shouldn't have to worry about needing to deal with testing or any other infection scares, unless of course someone in my household happens to catch COVID. But both of the people who live in my home, my father and my husband, have had their vaccines. My husband's had 2 because he's a healthcare worker, and my father had his first dose. It's rolling up very quickly here in Canada, so hopefully I'll get my jab in the arm and we will be able to move forward with life a little bit. That's it from me, book nerds. As always, happy reading.